trust is only found when we combine authenticity and relatability. So if I'm not authentic in that, it's not going to take hold. You won't build the momentum. We challenge each other. In my experience, challenges were always reserved for me. I was the only one who was going to issue challenges to the team. I was at the grocery store, walked out, I take the cart, and I put it in the spot right next to where my truck was parked. As I pull out, I can see that cart slowly sliding in my rearview mirror. And I thought, you hypocrite, you just failed yourself.
This is the Relentless Pursuit of Winning podcast, where we are here to educate, equip, and inspire people to build extraordinary companies. We're so glad you're here. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you can get updates every time we drop a new episode. Now, let's get it started. Hey, guys, this is the Relentless Pursuit of Winning podcast. My name is Rick Meekins, and I am back with another episode of our show. Today, we've got in the studio Kyle McDowell. How are you, sir?
Rick, I am wonderful. I'm so grateful for the opportunity to be here with you today. So thank you.
We're loving having you, man. So if you guys don't know, Kyle's written this blockbuster book called Begin With We, and it's about how to address organizational dysfunction and get organizations running better. So you're going to love this episode. But before we get started, please make sure you hit the like button, share, let everybody know that you are enjoying the show, and we can move forward from there. So Kyle, give us a little background, who you are, what you do, and why you do what you do.
Hey, Rick, I began my career probably very similarly than as compared to your audience. I started at the ripe age of 18 years old and found my way kind of climbing the corporate ladder, as they say, for the next 30 years. And when I made the decision to leave corporate America to write my book, I guess for some context, at the time, in my previous two roles before leaving the corporate world, I led north of 30,000 employees. So I've always been lucky enough to lead really pretty massive organizations, multi-billion-dollar P&Ls. But the thing that happened to me, which I think is not unusual, is as I began to kind of grow into the corporate world, take on more responsibilities, get these fancy titles in the cool corner offices, and all the trappings that come with, air quotes, success of the corporate world, because we all define success differently. Mm-hmm. I started to feel this overwhelming sense of apathy, which is kind of a tough pill to swallow, man, because I began to kind of loathe the environments that I was actually responsible for creating.
Wow.
And it was a combination of duplicity and dysfunction and toxicity, that I had witnessed and admittedly had perpetuated in some circles, that there was one question that began to be so loud in my mind that I just couldn't avoid it. And I knew something had to change. And that question was, is there a better way?
Yeah.
We spend roughly 100,000 hours of our lifetime on this planet doing this thing called work on average. And I just came to this realization that if I didn't find a better way, the apathy would become so strong that I would be worthless to my team, to my friends and family, to my wife. And by the way, this is probably worth mentioning. This kind of epiphany that I had came when I was right at the doorstep of a divorce that ultimately happened. My health was not in a great place. My work was killing me, but it was because I led in a way that was ego-driven. It was more about me and what I could do and the value that I could bring to an organization or a team, and less about the time and energy and investment of how much I care into those around me to deliver results. I was always focused on the results, not focused on the people that actually deliver the results. So to fast forward to today, when I made the decision to leave the corporate world to write my book, I had recently been with a company I had about 15,000 employees there. And I took the role under the assumption that I would be able to drive, and it was kind of a requirement, to drive a cultural transformation. There was a bit of dysfunction inside the team. And the night before I was going to meet with the top 40 or 50 leaders of this organization, of the role that I had just inherited, I knew I had to present a rallying cry of sorts. And I knew, there were a lot of tenured people, a lot of very senior leaders that were now members of the team that I had just inherited. And they had heard all the business cliches. They had heard all the starched shirt, shiny shoe guy coming in saying what he's able to do, and how my resume is so important, and lead with that ego again. But the night before, I crafted these 10 principles. At the time, I didn't even call them principles. There were these 10 sentences. They each began and still do begin with the word we. Fast forward a number of years later, the cultural transformation at that organization it's profound. But more importantly than the impact of in terms of results was watching bosses transition to leaders, and people genuinely care about those around them and be invested in those around them. So I made the decision to step away because that group, the initial group to kind of embrace the 10 We's, was the group that said, hey, you've got a bigger calling now. It's time to and take pen to paper and put this out there. So it felt like an obligation at that point. I wrote the book. It took me about a year and a half. It became a USA Today and Wall Street Journal bestseller. And now I spend like every waking moment kind of evangelizing these principles and the impact that they can have if we choose this better way. And principle-based leadership has been that change for me.
Wow. How close to your vest are those 10 principles? Is it like a values thing? Is it a logic thing? Is it a combination? Where do they come from?
Great question. Two responses come to mind. The principles are not values. They are, so by definition, a principle is our fundamental system of beliefs or our system of truth. And my take at the time was, if I can get a group of people to align around a series of principles, in other words, we all subscribe to the same fundamental beliefs. We're all on the same page with how we treat each other, the things that we do, our expectations of one another, align around principles, we are much better positioned for success. The second response I would have is when you say, how close are they to me? At first, they were strictly a work thing for me. Like, hey, team, this is how I expect us to behave. And more importantly, this is how you should expect me to behave. And if you don't see me behaving consistent with these principles, you're obligated. You're not allowed. You're obligated to call me out. There's no leadership gap here. If I want you to behave a certain way, I have to do the same, which was a real change for me because I usually led with my business card, banging my fist on the desk, and here's how we do things. But what the unintended byproduct, what happened was so cool to watch, not just in myself, but I see it now and I hear from countless readers. If we can find a space in our personal life for the same principles, the exact same principles, in other words, we're going to behave the same inside and outside of work. Now, I'm not naive. There are some differences. We got to, have some level of decorum inside the workplace that maybe we wouldn't have outside. But if we can authentically be that same person and live those same principles, we remove any hypocrisy, and it's much easier to step inside the workplace and be this person who is grounded and focused on these principles. So the unintended byproduct is how they have transcended into my personal life, my relationships with my wife, my friends, my family. And now they are essentially my guide rails for how I behave every single day. And I'm not shy about it, and I'm not perfect at it either. Yeah. But, I guess that's the takeaway for your audience is when you ascribe to and make a commitment to lead and live in a way that is consistent with your guiding principles, which is what the 10 We's are, you're much more predictable. The outcomes are predictable. You can almost finish each other's sentences because you know from where you're coming on most issues.
Yeah. What was, if there were any, what principle was most profound in your own life and the way that you lead?
Number 8, we challenge each other, because in my experience, challenges were always reserved for me. I was the only one who was going to issue challenges to the team. There were no challenges to me. There were no challenges peer to peer. So when I say we challenge each other, I always finish that with one word, second sentence, and it is diplomatically. And there's a rule. Challenges must be grounded in either data or experience. You just can't come in and spout your opinion, because we all have those and they're not necessarily helpful. But we challenge each other opens the door for us to say, why do we do it this way? Why we've always kind of taken this approach on this, you pick the topic, but is it valuable? Are we adding value to those we serve, the members of the team, or those that we serve externally, our clients? We challenge each other. It can be it's hard. It's really hard for people to grasp and get behind, because it kind of requires us to be a little more vulnerable than we've probably historically been. It requires us to drop the ego as the smartest person in the room, the person that has all the answers and has the funniest jokes also. So that for me is the most impactful and profound of them all.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds, it sounds humbling in a way, but at the same time, it seems like a way to really be able to get your team. Like if we're giving the team permission to hold us accountable as leaders, it seems like we would produce better results, and if you're taking that into your personal life as well, I mean, is that what you're seeing? I mean, what's an example of something you've seen?
Well, I look at it this way, man. If you're leading a team of one or a team of 15,000, there's no way one person has the best ideas. There's no way that one person has 360-degree view of what it is we're trying to accomplish. I'm a sports nerd, so I'll draw a comparison to football. So when a quarterback is sacked 5 times in a game, I used to see it. We would see it with Tom Brady all the time. He would spring up and he would bark at his offensive linemen. He's challenging them to do their job, challenging them to be better. If we wait for one person, the coach, to be the only one who's allowed to issue challenges and pull the best out of us, we're striving for excellence, not perfection. We're striving for excellence. One person can't do that. Similarly, like on an NFL roster, there are 53 men on the active roster of an NFL team. There's a reason there's a slew of assistant coaches, coordinators, all kinds of other folks, because they're the ones who know the most about that individual group. And they're the ones to issue challenges, not just the head coach. And then within those individual units, like as I mentioned, the example with Tom Brady is peers need to be challenging peers to be their best. We can't wait for the boss to be the one to bring the most and best performance out of us.
Yeah. You mentioned excellence and perfection. Talk to me. Go dive into that a little bit.
Yeah. So aspiring for perfection is a recipe for disappointment. I want my teams and those I work with to be focused on excellence. That doesn't mean we're not going to make mistakes. It does mean we're constantly going to strive to be the very best we can be. And an example I would give, and I see this with some of the executive and their teams that I work with, is when we set a bar for performance, that bar is our kind of vision or our view of what excellence looks like. But if we're well below that bar and we're aspiring to reach the bar, every step up towards that is our step towards excellence. If we say we're aspiring for perfection, so improvement is the key there. If we're saying we're aspiring for perfection, well, every single month while we're improving, we're going to say we failed. And that doesn't make sense to me. It's like, let's set the target towards excellence and whatever that metric may be. And we're going to work like hell to get there. And we're going to recognize the progress we're making, reward and celebrate that progress. Because let's say we set this, let's just pick an example, our customer satisfaction scores. Let's say we're at 70 today and we view excellence as 90. We want to get to 90. So the following month we score 75. Should we beat each other up? Should we be disappointed? Or should we look at this as our system for improving, and we're trying to achieve this metric of excellence? It just allows the team to continue to be bought into the goal of excellence and that KPI, the 90 that we've established. When we say we want perfection, we're just going to end up disappointed. Nobody's perfect. And that's why the principles are so important. There's a principle in there called we pick each other up. It's we number 6. We pick each other up. So when we aspire for excellence and we fall short, we pick each other up, move on. So I believe it's foolhardy to say we're aspiring for perfection because it doesn't exist in most circles.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Can you run through the principles for us? Just give us a deep dive or not deep dive.
I'd love to, man.
What we're looking for.
Yeah, I'd love to. And I always have to give kind of 2 disclaimers.
Okay.
The first is they're incredibly simple. The principles, they're not controversial. They're not groundbreaking, but what they are in collection as a unit of sentences, these 10 principles, they create this coat of armor and this code of ethics for us, and almost like a cultural currency, which everyone has the same ability and right and obligation to spend evenly and equally. That's the first caveat. So, and when I'm on stage or when I'm doing conversation or in the middle of conversations like this, I start to kind of walk through them. I can almost hear the person or people on the other end of the folks in the crowd say, well, no, Kyle, of course we're going to do these things. So I give that caveat: simple, but not easy. Simple is not the same as easy. Okay. And then the second is, as I walk through them, and I've already kind of tipped the cap to this, is as I walk through them, think about the impact these principles could have on your personal life, on your relationships, outside of the workplace. If you were to say, I'm going to subscribe to these principles every single day, what might that mean? Because I'm hearing from readers that it's changed how they're raising their children. It's changed how they approach their relationships, which is, we all want to be in trusting relationships. In the workplace, it's no different, but certainly in our personal lives. So with those 2 kind of caveats in mind, or disclaimers, I'll run through them. The first is the most foundational of them all. It's we number 1. We do the right thing. Always. I never leave out that one word second sentence. Always. We can argue and disagree about what the right thing is. In the book, I walk the reader through kind of a decision tree or a filter to try to land on the right thing, but we will never, ever be accused of not doing the right thing. We're going to make the best decisions we can at the time that we have to make that decision based on the data we have. But we're never going to cut corners, look the other way, or act like something that's super gnarly around the corner is not there. We're going to do the right thing. If we're going to do the right thing and we're committed to that, that takes us to we number 2. In my mind, if we're trying to achieve excellence, the number one way to demonstrate our commitment to doing the right thing is number 2. We lead by example. And it sounds so trite, but the question is not, should I lead by example? Because you already are. All of us are leading by example every minute of every day. The question is, am I leading by an example that I would be proud to see replicated? And it's not just major strategic decisions either. It's like, as I'm walking down the hallway and I've got my phone in my hand and I'm buried in my phone and a colleague walks my way, do I take the time to put my phone down and look up and say, hey, Rick, how's it going? Good to see you. You know, because if I don't do that and I'm buried in my phone, I've sent this message that whatever I've got going on in here is more important than you. And that's clearly not the case. But what's worse is Rick sees me with my head down. I don't acknowledge him. I don't say hello. He does the same thing to the next person walking his way. And all of a sudden, we have this group of people that work for the same place, but we're not a team. We're just a group of people. So if I want to demonstrate my commitment to leading by example, it takes us to we number 3. And that's, we say what we're going to do, and then we do it. If you want to be known for someone that's setting an example for others to replicate, you got to make good on your commitments. We must make good on our promises. We're usually pretty disciplined about keeping our commitments to those we serve externally, our clients, but rarely is that same expectation in black and white behind the scenes. We've all been in an environment where it's like, hey, I need this report so I can take it to this customer, or I need something from a member of my team so I can take it over here. Maybe it's to my boss or whatever. And when that person fails to deliver on that, this whole chain of dominoes, or this chain is broken. So we've got to keep our commitments to one another. Now, when we make a commitment and we're earnest in our ability to deliver on that, that means we got to do number 4, and that's we take action. Every organization, every team is aware of an opportunity to be better. Maybe we have a suboptimal process, or maybe we have an IT kind of configuration that is not the most optimal, makes us jump through a bunch of hoops to deliver something to a customer or even to one another. In a culture of excellence, we're not going to just shy away from it. And taking action doesn't necessarily mean we're going to jump in and fix it, but we're not going to ignore it. We're going to point it out, and we're going to get it on a list to say, these are the list of things that we need to be better at, but we're not going to deny that it's there. We're going to take action, because otherwise we're kind of subscribing to mediocrity. And that's a terrible place to be. Nobody wants to be mediocre. Now, if you want the team to take action and subscribe to we number 4, got to be prepared to live we number 5. We own our mistakes. You know, the problem has sat in a corner unaddressed for a variety of reasons, and usually because there's no incentive to raise my hand and say, man, I got to get after this, or because it's usually going to result in more work. More often than not, it doesn't result in more pay. So when we want people to take action, we got to be prepared and understand that they're going to stumble. We're going to stub our toe. So we're going to own those mistakes, because as cliche as it sounds, man, mistakes really are, they're opportunities for improvement. It's data to me. If we make a mistake, we know this is not the right path. Let's try something else. But no one's going to own their mistakes, we number 5, without we number 6. And that is, we pick each other up. So whether you are struggling with something outside of work, maybe you've got a sick child, you're going through a divorce, whatever the scenario is, or you're stumbled inside the workplace, maybe your results are down, or you're just not delivering at the same level of quality that we're used to seeing. It's our obligation as humans, man, not just as the boss or a leader. It's our obligation as a human to say, hey, Rick, is everything okay? I don't need to know all the details, but I just want you to know I care. I'm here for you. We pick each other up. Now, there's a second obligation as well. This is specifically for the leader of the group, and that is to propel others to new heights. You want my job? All right, let's come up with a plan to get you there. You want to leave this team to go do something else? Cool. I'm good with that. Let's align on what those goals are for you, and let's help you get to that next step, whatever it is for you. That's the bit of humanity I think many of us have lost throughout our journeys in the corporate world. When we pick each other up, it is with the intention or understanding that we're trying to deliver excellent outcomes. Introducing we number 7. We measure ourselves by outcomes, not activity. I don't care how many meetings you were in. I don't care that you were double or triple booked. We have established a set of expectations for delivery of whatever it is, number of widgets, a quality number, whatever it is, your productivity measurements. That's what we care about. because that's all the customer cares about. As a matter of fact, if our customers knew that we spend 7 of 8 hours yesterday in meetings and they can't see an improvement in the product or service we offer them, it should be scrutinized. They're not going to be happy to hear that. Hey man, I'm really happy that my Uber driver puts gas in the car before they pick me up, but I'm not paying for that. I'm paying to get from A to B. I'm not saying activity is not important, but if it's not why we get paid. It's not what we do and why we're in business. So outcomes over activity. The biggest culprit is meetings. We need much better meeting etiquette in the corporate world and not just have meetings instead of a conversation or a phone call. So outcomes over activity is huge. We number 8, I've already touched on, is we challenge each other. I'll move past that because we number 8 is a recipe for chaos without we number 9. And that's we embrace challenge. And it's not just challenges from inside the team or the boss. Like when we say we embrace challenge, that means external forces as well. There's a competitive threat has entered our market. Perhaps we have pricing issues. Maybe we're dealing with some tariffs. We are going to be ready and embrace those challenges. We're not going to be naive about them. We're not going to act like they're not there. We're going to say, okay, I got the right group of people in front of me, to my left, to my right. We're going to lock arms. We're going to embrace this challenge and be better off for it. Doesn't mean we're going to win every time, but it does mean that we're not going to shy away from challenges. We number 10 is the final of all the we's, and I was intentional to leave it as number 10 because, again, it'd be a recipe for disappointment otherwise, and that's we obsess over details. In so many industries, so many organizations, the difference between winning and losing, becoming great versus just being good, or being world-class versus being great, is our obsession with details. I'll toss this to you. Are you an Apple guy? You an iPhone guy?
No.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, don't be sorry. It's the reason I use Apple is because I did a bit of research on them. Apple puts and I'm sure other manufacturers do as well, but I'll juxtapose that. They put engineers in rooms every time a new product is launched. They essentially lock them into these rooms for months on end to create an unboxing experience that wows the consumer.
Wow.
Right? The boxes fit so beautifully together. They got these little sexy stickers that you put with an arrow on it, shows you exactly where to pull. Like it's really an experience. Unboxing videos didn't exist before iPhones and Apple became so enamored with the unboxing experience. If you compare that or contrast that with, say, a product from Amazon, from a lesser known company, sometimes the instruction manual, if there's one even in there, it's full of grammatical errors, spelling errors. They don't make sense. How about comparing it to an IKEA instruction manual or assembly manual? It just doesn't invoke the same level of care. And at the end of the day, the level of our level of obsession with the details is a direct indication of our obsession with the details and our customer's experience. We don't half-ass it. You know, when we create a presentation, the fonts are exactly the same. The margins are the same. We really care about the product we put out, especially if it's going to be consumed by an external constituent, a customer. That's the 10 W's.
Wow. Those are great. I'm curious about, I guess I'm curious about a couple of things, but one is, really, putting this on the road. You go into an organization, you say, hey, these are the things that we're going to do. What is that like?
Tough. It's tough. And so in my world today, the way it usually works is a member of a team, perhaps the most senior member of the team, has read the book. And in the book, I obviously go into much greater detail on how to implement these principles, the pitfalls to look out for, the benefits that come with each principle. So I'll either be on stage or a member of a team has read the book, and then they'll reach out to me to say, we want to take this deeper. What do we do? So we've developed an accompanying workbook that members, team members, or leadership teams as a whole can go through these workbooks. But the question always becomes, okay, we're in. We love the principles. We're going to make them kind of our code of conduct. How long does it take before we have this culture of excellence, Kyle? And the answer is, I don't know. Because I can't measure your commitment. I can't measure how bought in you are as a leadership team. Because if you introduce these principles as an initiative or just kind of some sexy spur of the moment, I read this book, here's what we need to do to be excellent. It's an initiative. Now that's going to be harder for people to get behind because it's top down. It requires making the choice to lead probably differently than you've ever led. And it requires making the choice to be the leader you've probably never been. And that's a decision that has to be made once on the very first time you've kind of you've been introduced to these principles, but then you got to make that same decision the very next day.
Mm.
and the day after that, and the day after that, and multiple times a day in some cases, because you're going to be greeted with opportunities or challenges or situations where it's easy to lean back against your business card and say, because I said so.
Mm-hmm.
But when we're all aligned around these principles, because I said so is no longer in our vernacular. It's not, we don't use those words any longer because we're focused on finding the right and most optimal solutions. We're not focused on being right. So first it requires a choice, then requires a choice, and then oh, by the way, it requires a choice again. And it requires a commitment that is not usually found in most circles. And it's not easy. It's not easy at all.
Yeah. Yeah. Is this something that, one of the things that one of the principles is leading by example? I mean, is that typically, where this starts, where the leadership is walking around and living these principles and, guiding and directing rather than, and I say that as opposed to saying, hey guys, go home, read this book and we're going to do this every day.
Yeah. Great observation, Rick. Of all the principles, we lead by example. It's probably the most important for teams or organizations at the beginning of the journey. Because, if I walk in and say, again, I read this book or I saw this guy on stage and I think there's value here, go live it. But I'm still behaving the same way, it's dead on arrival. And I think the most important ingredient to all of this is trust. And trust is only found, in my mind, when we combine authenticity and relatability. So if I'm not authentic in that this is who I want us to be, and I'm going to demonstrate that every single day, it's not going to take hold. You won't build the momentum that you would otherwise build. And the relatability factor is, this is hard, man. This is new. This is different for all of us. It's going to be awkward and uncomfortable for some of us, probably more than not. But if we're committed to it and we can relate to the challenges that we're having as we try to kind of ingrain these into our cultural DNA, we have common ground. So when we are relatable and authentic, trust ensues, and then the team knows it's not an initiative. This is who we are. This is how I want us to be seen. This is the leadership legacy I'm trying to create for myself and help you establish as well. So I think that leading by example, they got to see people model it over and over and over again, because I do this on stage sometimes and it's not backfired yet. I ask the audience, hey, if your company has a mission statement, raise your hand. Of course, 99 out of 100 people will raise their hand. If you can recite that mission statement, keep your hand up. The hands slowly start to come down. The principles, the 10 W's, are not a mission statement. They're not corporate values. They enable those things. Yeah. So if we want people to subscribe to them and live them every single day, they have to see it. Because as you know, as well as anybody, one bad apple can spoil the bunch, right? So if we have a member of the team who is a toxic member and we allow that person to stay on the team, it sends the message to the rest of the team that this is okay. You can behave this way. The beautiful thing about that is the opposite is true. So when I establish these principles as my guiding principles and you see me living them every single day, it's much easier to get behind because you've seen it in action. Just like you can mimic someone's nonsense and garbage behavior. You see someone living the way that they proclaim that they want to live and lead by the principles. It's much easier to follow.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, from a business perspective, I mean, there's, this is potentially a massive change. What kind of outcome, are we looking at as an organization? We've adopted the principles. We're, pretty much rowing in the same direction, same speed. What happens to the organization as a whole, as a result of embracing these?
Love that question, because I've been so lucky to see it happen so many times now I can't count, including as the leader inside of an organization, not just as a guy that's given the speech or sold the book or doing leadership work with members of the team. First of all, you become much more efficient. You almost can finish each other's sentences. So my favorite example is back to we number 8, we challenge each other. In the past, before implementing these principles or helping others implement them, let's use a staff meeting, for example, right? You have the boss sitting at the end of the table and everyone around the table goes through their readouts, right? And as one person speaking, everyone else in the room is down on their phones. They got their laptop open. They're just kind of doing their own thing. They're readouts. They're not conversations. When we open the door for challenge, AKA we number 8, you have an obligation to call out or express not discontent, but you have an obligation to say, I heard what you just said, Rick, but in my experience, that's not quite true. And here's what I've experienced. And it creates this allows for open dialogue to actually get to the right and optimal answer. So what happens is we start to become more efficient. And if we're grounded on doing the right thing, if we're facing a tough issue, we've already eliminated the slippery response that we could give. That's not even in the conversation because we know we're going to do the right thing. So it makes us more efficient. Ultimately, what happens, there's another step, but then I'll get to the ultimately. What I have seen is an increase in things like employee engagement. I've seen an increase in employee satisfaction. I've seen an increase in customer satisfaction. And I've seen from A to Z, in the most surprising of ways, the improvement of KPIs that otherwise I don't think we would have seen. But more importantly, and ultimately, is the impact it's having on individuals. I've watched bosses transform into leaders. And there's a very big difference, as you know. So I would boil it down to those three things. We become much more efficient. Our results are quantifiable, tangible results almost always improve. But most importantly, we're doing it in a way that's collaborative. We're no longer this boss, kind of do as I say type mentality. And it's a more collaborative environment where we're all invested in what we do.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like a recipe for a win. I mean, in reality, I mean, again, if we've got everybody rowing in the same direction, same mindset, it seems it just turns into a culture of high trust, high performance, and then, of course, high outcomes.
That's it. And Rick, I must add, I'm not naive, man. There are organizations, and I can imagine there are probably members of your audience listening or watching this now, and they're like, well, he doesn't work where I work. That's not how it works. I get it. I totally get it. I'm not naive to that. I would just say to you, if you feel like you're in an environment where you're not finding the fulfillment that you crave, your input is not as valued as you think it should be, you might need to make a tough decision. Am I in the right place? Yeah. Because I guarantee you, I've seen it so many times now. There are environments that do embrace this type of approach, this type of leadership. They're not the norm. They are the exception. But sometimes we have to take 1 or 2 steps backward to make 3 or 4 or 5 forward. So for those that are kind of skeptical or think that this would never work in my organization, I would say this: try it. Don't wait for the most senior of leaders to say, here's who we are, here's what we're doing. You can implement these principles as a leader of no people. You don't have to have direct reports to do this. And what I've seen happen, especially if there's resistance in other areas of the organization, or you have some legacy leaders that are just kind of not on board with this way of approaching leadership, you will create momentum. And you'll start to see members of other teams want to join your team because, hey, man, Rick's got something special going on over there. And where we are in this organization, this part of the organization, we don't embrace this type of stuff. So you'll create momentum. And then all of a sudden, those resistors have a choice. They have a choice as well. They can get on board or they can get out. So I think that's how I would really encourage folks to kind of take those first small steps, is just try and see what happens.
I like that. It sounds like something that, even if we're looking at customer engagement, it sounds like we could kind of incorporate that thinking into how we're working with individual clients, especially, again, thinking, or, the principle that you mentioned, challenge each other. Sounds like there's a great opportunity to really strengthen, deepen relationships and trust. Is that something that you're seeing?
Dude, so I gave a talk. It's been a few weeks now. I gave a talk at a massive title insurance company, multi-billion-dollar firm. And after that keynote, a gentleman approached me and said, hey, I want to connect you with one of our biggest clients because I think they can add value. These principles can add value to their world as well. So I'm giving a talk to one of their biggest clients late next month. So I think that highlights exactly what you're saying. And it's on an individual basis as well. So if we serve if it's a B2C relationship where we have, a customer of one or a customer group of one,
yeah,
they feel it. They may not recognize the 10 principles. They may not kind of understand this is what's happening behind the curtains at your organization, but they feel it. Yeah. They also feel if you're toxic and dysfunctional behind the scenes, because if they have a problem, you can never get anything fixed. You never get it addressed. But when it's in a B2B environment, man, if we're both aligned around this, both organizations or both teams are both aligned around the same set of principles for how we treat each other, how we operate and what we do, it's a harmonious relationship unlike anything I've ever seen. And this is just the latest example of that. I've had multiple clients of mine reach back to say, hey, can you go meet with this client? Because they're not naive. If they can have their clients embrace it as well, boy, that relationship is so much stronger.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Wow. Wow.
Good
So
observation, man.
thank you. So say, I get the book, read the book, enjoying the book. What is there a recommended, I don't know, cheat code or something like that that I can use as I'm going throughout my day, engaging with different people? I'm the only person, in the organization, for example, that has come across the book. I mean, what's the easiest way or what's the best way for me to reinforce that? And I'm thinking from the perspective of, like yeast. You get your yeast growing, it multiplies, 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 and ideally we're incorporating change from behind, if you will.
So you kind of touched on it already, but and that's the living it, setting the example, having other people see you behave in this way is much easier to get buy-in than just telling them. Like our actions must align with our words. Otherwise, forget it. None of this is going to work. I have found being really conspicuous about it. Like it's not valuable to come and say, hey, I read this book and this is who I want us to be. But what is valuable is to say, I have subscribed to a series of principles that I think we can all benefit from. And when I say conspicuous, it's things like I've worn a We bracelet nonstop since I created the principles. Using the principles in your daily vernacular, not only does it make awkward conversations easier, it emphasizes what we're subscribing to do and how we expect others to behave. For example, Rick, let's pretend you're on my team, right? And you're typically a very high performer, but I've noticed the last month or so your results have started to decline. Well, I'm going to start the conversation with you. It's like, hey, Rick, we challenge each other, right, man? So you're familiar with the principles because I've already shared them with you, and now I'm living them. And you see, I'm going to challenge you in a way that I'm bringing data or experience. I'm not going to just give you my opinion. And then I'm probably going to transition from we challenge each other to, and Rick, we pick each other up. And I've seen you perform at a level that is probably much better or maybe even slightly better than where you are today. And I care. I care. So I'm here to challenge you because I know you have better in you. And I'm also here to pick you up. So if there's something I can do to remove a barrier, maybe there's something that you haven't shared with me and you don't have to share the details, but if there's something in the way of you achieving that excellence, it's my responsibility to help get that out of the way for you. So when we're conspicuous about our adoption of the principles, they become part of our daily vernacular. We can go as far, and this was a beautiful thing when I created these principles many, many years ago, is I had 11 offices at the time. I would bounce from one office to the next every month. I would go around the country and visit different offices. And without my urging or direction or commissioning of it at all, I started to see signs all over, coffee mugs, t-shirts, hats, the bracelets. It was really heartwarming, but more importantly, it was a sign to me that it was no longer the new guy talking about, how we're going to do these things. People had invested in them themselves, and it's now part of their vernacular and DNA inside that individual office. So displaying it, speaking it, and never shying away from it, as awkward as it might sound, is my best advice.
Wow. I was curious about the merchandise. I'm glad you showed the man, that's awesome. So what is your vision? I mean, you've created this thing. Obviously, you've seen the opportunity for change. What is your vision? What would you like to see the ultimately happen with the principles?
Well, man, I love that question because it is much bigger than me. It's much bigger than any book. So my answer is kind of twofold. The first is we're already doing this with my company now, is we're working towards certifying organizations as we certified organizations, where we go in, we meet with depends on who is chosen, but usually it's like the most senior leaders. And we'll go through an intense multi-day process, multiple hours a day, walking through each of the principles in much more granular detail. So I mentioned we have this workbook. We're also in the process of building out an individual version that's going to be online. So you don't have to be a leader of people. You don't have to do it inside the workplace. You can do this on your own. So, ultimately is having a slew of, that's the technical term, a slew of organizations that have not only subscribed to the principles, but you can tell via a series of surveys and other kind of quantifiable ways that they're actually living them. So a We certified organization is what we're already in the process of building. I've got 2 clients right now that are subscribed to it. Really beautiful to watch the transitions and transformation that they're having. It's really impactful. It's profound for me to watch. That's one. And the second is, I've mentioned it a couple of times, but I'll be a little bit more direct, is these principles should not be a work only thing. As a human, if I've established my principles, my guiding principles, the things that I will lean into when I face adversity, when things aren't going well. My favorite example, and this is kind of silly, but it is the one that rings so loud to me, is when I realized I was being a hypocrite and I was living the principles inside the workplace, but I wasn't outside. It was a moment in time that I remember like it was yesterday. So I was at the grocery store, walked out, I checked out of the grocery store. I'm walking to my truck. I get out there, I unload the groceries, and I take that grocery cart. This is a true story. I take the grocery cart and I put it in the spot right next to where my truck was parked. I didn't take it back to the building, and I didn't take it back to the little corral where all the carts are supposed to be returned. Mm-hmm. I back up, and as I pull out, I can see that cart slowly sliding in my rearview mirror. And I thought, you hypocrite. If you're the guy that's focused on doing the right thing, you just failed yourself. And I shared that story, and I've never left a grocery cart in the wrong place ever again. And I hate those people that do it. And usually when I tell the story, the person on the other end is like, you're that guy. But I found the connection that is so important to me. And now I'm seeing it with readers and those that I work with, is you can't be this person inside the workplace and not the person outside the workplace and expect people in the workplace to take you seriously, because back to that authenticity component. So the bigger goal for me is that this is a movement. It's not a work thing. It's not a leadership thing. And it doesn't even have to be the 10 W's. My encouragement for others is define your principles. What do you want to be known for? What are your own personal set of rules that you hold yourself accountable to? You're a fit guy. When you're in the gym, do you leave a plate on the bar or do you take it back to the rack?
Take it back, man.
It's the right thing, right? And that's every single morning that we plays through my head, because when I'm in the gym and I'm finished with a set or a particular exercise, of course I'm spent, I'm sweaty. I don't want to take that plate back, but it's the right thing. It's the right thing. And then it becomes this identification. I identify with these principles now, and I am committed to not let somebody catch me not living them. Mm-hmm. And they do. I'm not perfect at it, but that's the ultimate goal, man, is that this becomes more of a movement, that we all hold ourselves accountable to a series of principles. And it's hopefully the 10 W's.
I love it. I love it. Love it. What's the best way to get started as an individual?
Make a choice. You got to choose. And I'd probably argue even just before that is a bit of self-reflection is, let's take a moment to step off of the hamster wheel that we call work and find some quiet time. And maybe it's a confidant of yours, but have a conversation either with yourself, but be vulnerable and be prepared to answer the questions. Mm-hmm. Am I the leader that I want to be seen as? Am I leading in a way that I would be proud? My mother's been gone for 13 years now, and she's still a filter for me. Am I behaving in a way that she would be proud to see? Another example is, imagine if a documentary film crew were following you and they captured you in a one-on-one or a team meeting or a staff, whatever the scenario is. Mm-hmm. Would that be a thumbs up 5-star film? Or would that be a horror flick? That's a choice that you have to make. And that choice can only be made after a little bit of self-reflection. And for me, it was like this apathy had become so strong. I knew I needed something different. I had this question of, is there a better way? But had I not taken the time to do that self-reflection and the kind of the introspective, the deep stuff to say, this is not, if you're going to spend 100,000 hours at this thing called work, you really should get more out of it than just a paycheck. You got to have an impact on those around you. You got to be fulfilled in what you do. You got to feel good about what you do. So that would be the start, is let's have a little bit of self-reflection. Am I the person I want to be seen as? When people go home and talk about me at the dinner table, is it going to be good or bad? I'm the one that can decide that for them. And that's how I treat them. So start with the self-reflection, and then it's a choice. As I mentioned earlier, it's not just a daily choice. It's really every interaction. We have to choose to be this principle-based leader.
Yeah. Awesome. People can pick up your book. Where's the best place to do that?
It's available wherever books are sold. There's an Audible version, ebook. Mostly Amazon is where I most of my sales come from, because it is so easy to find. As a matter of fact, I think the paperback is discounted to like $10 right now. So that's typically the fastest and easiest way to get it.
Okay, cool. And what kind of cool stuff do you have on your website for us?
So lots of cool stuff on the website. You can check out links to speeches. You can check out links to individual we's, so you can learn more about individual we's. There's a contact us in there, and I share that because I love hearing from readers and folks that are either struggling with the principles or they've seen change because they've implemented or are living the principles. So you can contact me through that engine as well.
Awesome. Awesome. And I know I bumped into some of your stuff on Instagram, some great motivational stuff. Are you still doing that?
I am, and thank you for asking. So essentially all social media platforms have the same handle. It's at Kyle McDowell Inc. Website is also kylemcdowellinc.com. Yeah, I'm just trying to spread the message as far and wide as I can.
Awesome. And we'll make sure we get all that on your show notes. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed the conversation. Thanks for being here.
Rick, it's my pleasure, man. I think you're doing such important work, so it's an honor to be here. And thank you for giving me the platform to share the message. I appreciate it.
I'm grateful. Folks, thank you for watching or listening to another episode of the Relentless Pursuit of Winning podcast. We're glad you're here. Take care. Have a great day.